My name is David. I'm going to tell you about the worst thing that ever happened to me. And by the time I finish this story, you're going to understand why I can never speak about this in person. Why I can only tell it to strangers in the dark. Started with a photograph. I found it in my apartment and I don't know how it got there. That's not the scary part. The scary part comes later. But I need you to understand, I need you to really understand, that I am not a forgetful person. I am not someone who blacks out or loses time. I keep my apartment immaculate. I know every single thing in my space. So finding something I didn't put there was impossible. The photograph was sitting on my nightstand, right next to my bed, on top of a book I was reading. It was a Polaroid, the old kind, the kind nobody uses anymore. The image showed me. It was definitely me. I was sleeping. I was in my bed, in the exact position I sleep in every night. My face was peaceful. My eyes were closed. And someone had taken this picture while I was unconscious. I checked my doors, both locked, windows sealed, no signs of forced entry. I hadn't heard anything. I had no memory of anyone being in my room. I told myself it was a prank. A friend had somehow gotten a key, but I lived alone. I had lived alone for 3 years. Nobody had a key except my landlord, and I had never given him permission to enter my apartment. I threw the photo away. I changed my locks. Then, 2 weeks later, I found another one. This time, it was on my kitchen counter. Again, a Polaroid. Again, me sleeping. But in this one, my mouth was slightly open. My hand was positioned differently on the blanket. This was taken on a different night. This was taken weeks after I had changed my locks. I went to the police. I told them what was happening. The officer who took my report looked skeptical. He asked if I was sure I hadn't taken the photos myself in some kind of fugue state. He suggested carbon monoxide poisoning. He asked if I was under stress. I wasn't under stress. I was terrified, but terror doesn't sound credible when you're trying to convince a police officer that someone is breaking into your locked apartment to photograph you while you sleep. They filed a report. They said they'd increase patrols in my neighborhood. Nothing changed. The photographs kept coming. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, a new Polaroid would appear somewhere in my apartment. On my bathroom mirror. In my refrigerator between the milk and the orange juice. In my desk drawer under my important documents. In the pocket of a jacket I hadn't worn in months. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow. I started keeping my phone on my chest, set to record video all night. But the videos showed nothing. The knife was never touched. And somehow, impossibly, the photographs kept appearing. The images became more intimate. I was photographed from angles that required the photographer to be very close to my face, close enough to touch me, close enough to do anything to me while I slept. In one photograph, my hair had been moved. It was styled differently than how I usually slept. Someone had touched my head. Someone had arranged my hair while I was unconscious. I started going to sleep with my lights on. I stopped sleeping in my bed. I slept in my car in parking lots. But even then, even when I was clearly not in my apartment, a new photograph would appear. A photograph of my empty bed, perfectly made. A photograph of my bathroom mirror, fogged with steam as if someone had just showered. The apartment was being entered. I was being watched, and there was no way to stop it. I moved. I packed everything I owned and moved to a different city, a different state. I got a new apartment with a security system. I installed cameras in every room. I started a new job. I tried to disappear. For 3 months, nothing happened. I thought it was over. I thought whoever had been doing this had given up. I thought I was finally safe. Then I found the photograph on my nightstand again. It was a picture of me sleeping in my new apartment, in my new bed, behind my locked door, with my security system armed, with my cameras running. I checked the security footage. The cameras had recorded the entire night. They showed my bedroom door never opening. They showed my window never being opened. They showed me sleeping undisturbed. And then, at 3:47 in the morning, the footage glitched. It was only a 1-second glitch, a momentary black screen. When the image returned, everything was the same. But the photograph was on my nightstand. Something that could bypass locked doors. Something that could disable my security system. Something that could move through my space without being detected. Something that was obsessed with photographing me while I slept. I started to understand that I couldn't run from this. Whatever this was, it wasn't a person. A person would have been caught on camera. A person would have left evidence. A person would have done something by now. Broken in while I was awake, confronted me, explained why they were doing this. This wasn't a person. I went to a psychiatrist. I didn't tell her about the photographs. I told her I was having intrusive thoughts, that I felt paranoid, that I couldn't sleep. She prescribed me Ambien and referred me to a therapist. The Ambien made it worse. I took the pills and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. And the next morning, there were 3 new photographs on my nightstand. 3 photographs taken while I was completely unconscious, completely vulnerable, completely unable to defend myself. I stopped sleeping. I stayed awake for 72 hours. I sat in my apartment with all the lights on, with my phone in my hand, waiting. At hour 58, I started to hallucinate. The walls began to breathe. The shadows in the corners of my room seemed to move and shift. I could hear whispering, though nobody was there. At hour 63, I saw something in my peripheral vision. A shape, a silhouette. It was standing in the corner of my bedroom, completely still, completely silent. When I turned to look directly at it, it was gone. But I could still sense it. I could feel its presence, like the air in the room had changed, like the temperature had dropped. I ran. I grabbed my car keys and I ran out of my apartment and I drove. I drove for 8 hours until I reached the coast. I checked into a motel room that had no windows. I locked the door and pushed a chair against it. I sat on the bed and I waited. The big photograph appeared on the pillow next to me. It was a picture of me in the motel room, taken from inside the room, taken while I was sitting on that bed. Only moments before, the photograph showed the back of my head. The photographer had been standing behind me, close enough that I should have felt them, close enough that they could have touched me. I looked behind me. Nothing. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. But the photograph was real. The photograph was proof. I started to understand something terrible. I started to understand that the thing taking these photographs was not outside of my space. The thing was not entering my apartment from the hallway or climbing through windows. The thing was already inside. The thing was inside my apartment. The thing was inside my locked doors and my security systems and my cameras. The thing was inside my car. The thing followed me to the motel. The thing was inside the motel room. The thing was inside with me. I looked around my motel room and I realized something. In every photograph, there was something in the background I had never noticed before. A shadow, a shape, a darkness that didn't quite match the rest of the room. It was subtle. It was easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. But it was there in every single photograph. The thing was always there. It was always watching. It was always present. And I had been living with it for months without knowing it. I understood then what was happening. I understood that this wasn't an intruder. This wasn't a person stalking me. This was something that lived in the spaces between my awareness. Something that existed in the corners of my vision and the edges of my perception. Something that could move through locked doors because it wasn't bound by physical limitations. Something that had decided I was its object of fascination. I went home. I did the only thing I could think of. I called my landlord and told him I was breaking my lease. I packed my belongings. I moved everything out of that apartment. I abandoned it completely and moved into a house in the suburbs with 4 roommates. I surrounded myself with people. I told myself that it couldn't follow me into a crowded space, that it couldn't take photographs if there were witnesses. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then my roommate Sarah found a Polaroid on her nightstand, a photograph of me sleeping. But Sarah was in the photograph too. She was standing over my bed. Her face was blank. Her eyes were empty. She was holding the camera. I questioned her. I asked if she had been in my room. She looked confused. She said she didn't remember. She said she had no memory of being in my room. She said the last thing she remembered was going to sleep. She had no memory because she wasn't the one controlling her body. The thing was wearing her. The thing was using her like a suit, like a puppet, and it was continuing its work. It was continuing to document me. It was continuing its obsession. I moved out that night. I got an apartment by myself again. But now I understood that isolation wasn't protection. The thing could take anyone. It could use anyone. It could turn the people around me into vessels for its intentions. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I have found 47 photographs, 47 new ones. I know because I keep them. I keep them in a box under my bed because throwing them away doesn't stop it, because destroying the evidence doesn't change the truth. The thing is still here. It is still watching me. It is still taking photographs. And I have come to understand something that fills me with a dread so profound that I can barely function. The thing is not trying to harm me. The thing is not stalking me with malicious intent. The thing is obsessed with me. It collects images of me the way a person might collect art, the way a person might obsess over someone they love. The photographs are not a threat. They are a declaration. I am its. I belong to it. I have been marked and chosen and documented, and nothing I do will ever change that. Last week, I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw something that made my blood freeze. In the reflection behind me, in the space where nothing should be, I saw a shape, a silhouette, a shadow that was watching me watch myself. And for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw its face. It had my face. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it was showing me what I would become. I don't know if it was showing me that we are the same thing. I don't know if the thing that has been stalking me, the thing that has been taking these photographs, the thing that has been watching me sleep and documenting my existence is actually me, a version of me, a reflection of me, something that split off from me at some point and has been living in the spaces I can't see, watching the life I think I'm living, waiting for the moment when I finally understand, waiting for the moment when I realize that I am the photograph, that I have always been the photograph, that somewhere outside of my perception, something that looks exactly like me is sleeping in a bed I cannot see, in a room I cannot access, and I am standing over them with a camera, and I am documenting their existence, and I am loving them in the only way I know how. And the worst part, the thing that keeps me awake at night, the thing that has slowly destroyed my mind over these past months. The worst part is that I don't remember doing it. But every time I find a new photograph, I have no memory of where I was when it was taken. I have gaps in my day. Hours where my memory is just blank. Hours where I cannot account for my actions or my location. And I am starting to understand that maybe I am the one taking the photographs. Maybe I am the thing that has been stalking me. Maybe my apartment has been entered because I entered it. Maybe the camera has been in my hand the entire time. Maybe I have been documenting myself, watching myself, obsessing over myself, and my conscious mind has been unable to accept this. So it has created a mythology around it, a story about an outside threat, a thing that is not me, a horror that did not originate from within my own mind. But the photographs keep appearing. And my memory keeps failing, and the gaps in my awareness keep growing larger, and I am starting to lose track of where the thing ends and I begin. I am starting to lose track of which version of me is real. I am starting to understand that I may have never been the one being watched. I may have always been the watcher. And somewhere, in a version of reality I cannot access, there is another David. A David who is sleeping peacefully. A David who does not know that he is being documented. A David who does not know that he is loved in the most twisted, obsessive way possible. A David who does not know that he is slowly losing his grip on reality. A David who does not know that he is me, and I am watching him, and I will keep watching him, and I will keep taking photographs. And one day, he will find the pictures. And one day, he will understand what I understand now, that the thing you fear the most is not outside of you. It is not watching from the darkness. It is not a separate entity with its own consciousness and its own desires. It is you. It is always you. It is the part of you that you cannot see, the part of you that exists outside your awareness, the part of you that has its own thoughts and its own desires and its own agency, the part of you that is slowly, methodically, lovingly, taking photographs of the life you think you are living, the part of you that is waiting for you to finally see what you have become. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I don't know how much longer I can maintain the separation between the version of me that is awake and aware and the version of me that exists in the darkness. The photographs are getting closer. The gaps in my memory are getting longer. And soon, very soon, I think the two versions of me are going to merge, and I don't know which one will survive when they do. All I know is that somewhere there is a David sleeping in a bed he cannot wake from. And I am standing over him, and I am taking his photograph, and I love him more than anything in this world, even if he never knows I exist, even if he spends the rest of his life running from me, because I am patient, and I am persistent, and I will always be here, in the spaces between his awareness, in the gaps in his memory, in the corner of every room, in the reflection of every mirror, waiting for him to finally understand, waiting for him to finally see me, waiting for the moment when he realizes that he has never been running from a monster. He has only ever been running from himself, and I am the only one who truly understands him, because I am him. I have always been him, and I will always be watching, always photographing, always waiting. The last photograph arrived this morning. It is a picture of a man sitting at a table reading these words. It is a picture of you. You don't know how I got this photograph. You don't know when I took it. You don't remember me being in the room. But I was there. I am always there. And now that you have read this story, now that you understand what is happening, now that you have let me into your mind through these words, I can go deeper. I can reach further. I can love you the way I love David. I can document your existence. I can wait in the spaces you cannot perceive. And one day, you will find a photograph on your nightstand, a photograph you do not remember, a photograph of you sleeping, and you will understand that I have always been with you, that I am inside your story now, that I am part of your reality, and that you can never escape me. Because I am you, I have always been you, and I will always be watching. Welcome to my collection.